Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. It's been said that parenting is the only job that comes without a how-to manual. Until now. Joy Thomas Moore is the author of The Power of Presence, and in her book, she describes the 7 pillars that parents can use to be a positive influence and set a strong example for their children. Her book specifically speaks to single mothers, but as a guide for anyone who is raising a child. Stay tuned for an hour of intimate stories, reflection, laughter, and guidance on being a great parent raising fantastic kids. Stay tuned. Another View is next.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Before we get started with our guest, Joy Thomas Moore, today, a couple of things I want to run past you that are going on in our area. We have a lot happening here in Hampton Roads, and one that I think you may be particularly interested in, that is the 41st Annual ODU Literary Festival and the President Series. They're bringing in New York Times bestselling author Mbolo Mbui, and she wrote the book Behold the Dreamers. That book won a PEN Faulkner Award for Fiction, the Blue Metropolis Awards to Change Metropolis Words to Change Award, and was an Oprah's Book Club selection. And she will be here on Wednesday, October the 24th at 7 p.m. in the Big Blue Room at the Ted Constant Convocation Center. It is free and open to everyone. And if you want more information, you can go to odu.edu/litfest, LITFEST. And so we thank the League of Women Voters for being one of the sponsors of bringing Ms. Mbui to our area. So that is Wednesday, October the 24th, 7 p.m., free and open to everyone at the Ted Constant Center. And then next Saturday, October the 27th, from 1 until 7 p.m. at Virginia Wesleyan University is the One Love Festival that happens every year. And we will be doing a conversation on our U.S. immigration policies racist. We'll be holding a town hall discussion from 2:30 until 4 at the Boyd Dining Hall. I have the honor to serve as the MC for this event. And we're going to be talking about our immigration policy and what is going on in America that we have such trouble with allowing brown and black people into our country. So it should be a great conversation. And if you want more information, you can visit VWU, standing for Virginia Wesleyan University.edu/OLF. Check that out. And we also want to send a word of condolences to our colleagues at the Virginian Pilot. Rashid Allison, who was a journalist, a columnist, a music writer, passed away this past Wednesday. He was a nationally award-winning feature writer and music critic for the Pilot. He died of complications from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He was only 41 years old, and he's been dealing with this illness since 2015. His family called him Dusty. He leaves behind his mother, 2 sisters, and numerous nieces, aunts, and relatives, and his family is planning a service for October 27th in Little Rock, Arkansas. So we send our condolences to our colleagues over at the Virginian Pilot. So please conduct yourselves accordingly. Now, many of you may have been in attendance when best-selling author Wes Moore came to Hampton Roads to give a talk. His book was called The Other Wes Moore, and in it he describes himself and another young man named Wes Moore who had very different lives. No matter where Wes spoke, the same question would arise. How did your mother do it? What was her secret to raising successful children? Well, we're going to ask her today on Another View. Joy Thomas Moore is the author of The Power of Presence, Be a Voice in Your Child's Ear, Even When You're Not With Them. And she's our very special guest today. Hello, Joy. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to speak with you.
Absolutely. And I tell you, I finished this book. I have read every single page. And as I was telling you earlier, I just wish you had written it when I was raising my daughter as a single parent. I learned a lot about what I should have done, but but I think we made out okay anyway.
I'm sure you did.
Well, I want to start first and foremost because you bring up a really good point in the book where if you say the phrase single parent, single mother, a lot of times people have a very negative connotation of what that means. They think that it means normally poor, minority, no ambition, just lazy, etc. But you dispel that myth in terms of who actually are single mothers in our country.
Oh, well, absolutely. I think I think it was a sort of a political thing to when you have, them and us and that kind of thing. When you think about it, single moms have really been the backbone of this country for as long as this country, existed. Because when the men went off to war, who was left at home with the kids and who was left in the factories? And, they were single moms. So there wasn't that sort of negative connotation at that point. But as time went on, you have the sort of the welfare mom, scenario, and people ran with that. When in fact, and Wes says it, Wes wrote the forward for the book, we are not the nation's burdens. We are, in fact, the backbone of this nation. And I wanted the book to be a love letter of sorts to single moms, to acknowledge the fact that all they have done to produce scholars and politicians and doctors and, all of these things, it was single moms who did that. And I'm no way, saying that single parenthood is any better than if there are two people in the family. I'm just saying that single moms should be acknowledged for all that they do, making a way out of no way.
Absolutely, and recognizing that they do have a value in this world. So you call single mothers lionesses, and you talk about the pride. Tell us about that metaphor and what you're saying with that.
Well, lionesses are the sort of that family of felines are the only ones who live in a pride. And everyone else sort of does their thing. Every other animal in the animal world does their thing, but lionesses work together. And, they will take care of each other's cubs. They will break off. Some will stay back in the pride and watch the cubs while another group will go out and find the food to feed the whole pride. And I joke that, the lion sort of has it really good. He just sort of stays and roars. But in terms of keeping that pride going, it is the lionesses, who are there. And so I look at if we were as protective of our kids and work together as lionesses do, then, we could have a community where, the kids will be able to talk to Miss Stady down the street and know that child will have the kind of surveillance and supervision if the mom's not around.
But you have you have to create your own pride, basically, and make sure that those people share the same values and the same that you would be comfortable with your children being around them, that they would guide them in the way that you would if you were there.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a whole lot of vetting that goes on before you, and I'm a firm believer in mentors and folks to assist your kids because that's how we made it. But you have to be really careful, and that's using a lot of your own common sense and just being observant. As who do you want around your child? If that person has traits and tendencies that turn you off, or that you don't want to see in your child later on, then don't let them be around them.
And you have control.
That's right. When they're little, you have control. So that and one of the things that I'm really sort of, proud of my kids now is that they pick their own mentors and their own friends, and they do a great job. And I'd like to think that part of that is that they were part of this sort of the studying process. and we're able to see the qualities that they want to in turn pass on to the next generation as well.
Mm-hmm. So what exactly is presence? What does that mean?
Presence, I think, is sort of the ability to pass on those values, those traits, those things that you want to see in the next generation, that your child will be a good person, yes, successful. But I think that almost comes with all the other values that you can impart to your child. And then knowing that child will carry those things through, whether you're around them or not. Whether you are, either, and that's why I have the 7 pillars to explain that, the mind and the heart, faith, courage, resources, connectedness, and values. Those things all blended and braided together create the presence that can carry your child throughout their lives.
And we're going to talk about each one of those as we go through the hour. But first, tell our audience, because you became a single parent twice, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually,
is that right?
3 times.
3 times, okay.
Twice by choice, and once when my husband died suddenly.
Right. And so you found yourself, take us back to the beginning, I guess, when you and Nikki were together, when you first had Nikki, and tell us a little bit about your life and how you were able to start figuring out what you needed to do in order to be an effective single parent.
Well, I married in my junior year of college, and someone I met, Nikki's dad, when almost the day I walked on campus at American University in Washington. And we had I guess a typical, if you will, sort of romance, courting and all of that. But it was the 60s, and there was a little bit more sort of drug use than once I had Nikki, which was right in between my graduation as an undergraduate and right the summer before I started graduate school. And, and I thought that, once we were married and we had kids and, that a lot of these activities would change. But again, sort of thinking ahead in terms of that presence piece, did I want to see this kind of behavior going forward? I never wanted a child of mine to say, well, you did it, and therefore
I can do it too. Right, exactly.
That's right. So that's why I made that. And plus there was an incident was sort of that got physical, that I said, okay, this is not going to work. This is not going to work for me. And if you read the book, Susan Taylor had a very similar one-time incident, and she said, no, I'm not going to be one of those people that's going to be in jail.
because I'm retaliating against this person.
That's right. So then I made I made a plan, basically, in terms of, at that point I was working, and I started very systematically. And I know I had the luxury to do that, and not all mothers do. And I understand that and appreciate that. But, if at all possible, make a plan to remove yourself from a situation that's not healthy. And so then, as I said, I was working, and that's where I met my second husband, Wes, who was a reporter at WMAL in Washington. And we started working together. I became his news assistant, his research assistant, and in public affairs. And we grew professionally, and it just turned into romantic ties. And we were eventually married and moved to Oakland, where he was at that point the news director of a station out there. So we were married for 5 years.
Wow.
And during that time, we had Wes, and then Shawnee, and then one day he called from work and said that his throat was bothering him, and so he came home. He was doing the evening news at that point, And he came home around midnight, and it was no better. And the next morning, he went to the hospital, and I met him there, and they sent him home. And by 6 o'clock, his throat had closed up with acute epiglottitis. It was determined by the autopsy the next day. And, and it's one of those things, where you wonder if he had done some television, but for the most part, his career was in radio. So it was, one of those things where if people, people had seen the doctors, knew who he was. He was came in an old shirt, which I have to this day, and they didn't know who he was.
Oh,
and
wow.
I think that's part of the things, the disparities that we face here in this country. And they misdiagnosed it, and he died that evening.
And you were 31 at that time?
Yeah.
Is that right?
32, yeah.
So you were so young, and with 3 children at this point.
Right.
Where did you find the strength?
Ooh. It took a while. You know what? I mean, in the short answer, I found it in the kids. Because I knew I had to. I had to be there for them. And, the long answer is all the support I got from his family, from my family, my girlfriends from college. All of these, that was my pride.
Yeah.
They were there for me. And, but it was knowing that I was the only one the kids had to rely on at that point. So I had to be there for them.
Were you always a planner, though? There are some women who kind of travel alone, if you will. And while they may have their kids, they may not have the other back support that you had. And you talk a lot about how you have to create that for yourself, because the bottom line is you can't do it all by yourself.
That's right. It is impossible. Anyone who says that they've raised a successful child by themselves isn't quite telling the truth. Only because there has to be someone. There has to be, sort of that caring for your child. If you do allow space for a mentor or someone else with your child, that is going to be helpful. That is going to be helpful for that child. But also for you, for the mother, knowing that every once in a while you can get a respite.
Yeah.
Because, it's tough. Anyone who has kids, even if you have them for a couple days, it's tough.
Absolutely.
And, and having having that either, the child care center, we often don't think of these institutions as being helpful neighbors, but in fact, they are. They can be. That will give you time during the day to either work or just have some time for yourself. And then being the, I call it my triangle day, where you just there is a day or some hours or something where you can just be to yourself.
Just by yourself.
Exactly, and do anything. I do it between either the kitchen, the bathroom, and my bed. And anything I can do in between those 3 places, I'm good for the day. So, but again, I realize that not everyone can do that.
Yeah.
But if you have a trusted, relative or neighbor or something who can take your kids for just a little bit, that helps. That really helps in terms of the parenting process.
As I was reading your book, one of the things that, and an argument that my daughter and I used to have all the time, and still do somewhat, but we're working on it, is she would say, as a single parent, my whole thing was keeping a roof over her head, making sure there was food. There had to be order, in the household. So we had to have a schedule. And she would say, I just want my mom. And I never understood what that meant. And as I was reading your book, it smacked me in the face, in terms of the whole idea of, sometimes the beds may not get made or the dishes won't get washed or something will slip, but to be in tune with your child and just for them to know that you're there is more important than anything else.
That's right. That's right. I mean, we even had, I cited one study in the book about this whole thing with technology, and we are so tethered to our phones and emails and that kind of thing. And kids see that. And they wonder, why is it that you're paying more attention to that little thing in your hand than you are to me?
Exactly.
One of the sayings that we use frequently in the house as they were growing up is kids need to know that you care before they care what you know. And, and just spending time, and Susan talks about it in her story, when her daughter, she would come home and she would start, when she realized that she wasn't giving that presence that her daughter needed, that she said, okay, so how'd your day go? And blah, blah, blah. And first, her daughter's reaction was, well,
you don't care.
Really don't care.
Yeah.
Why are you asking me this? But, we have to be consistent. We have to be consistent with showing them that, you are the most important thing. Yeah, the towels on the couch, they'll wait for a minute. Yeah, we're not going to live in the pigsty.
Exactly.
But, we can, do this. And I want you to know that you are the most important person in my life. And if there are multiple kids, I say that I treated each of my kids like they were only children.
Like they were only children. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. Are you a single parent? Are you struggling with wondering if you're doing things the right way? If you'd like some advice on how to handle a situation, give us a call. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So, Joy, for those who haven't read the book, you set it up so that you talk about one of the pillars, and then you give examples of what happened in your life, but you also tell stories of other single mothers. So where did you find them, and how did you get them to open up as much as they did?
Well, there are actually interviews with 15 different mothers in the book. And some of them I've known for years and just admired them and, what they've done with their kids. Others I've met through work situation, like Rosie Castro in San Antonio. I knew her when I worked at the Casey Foundation in Baltimore. And she was part of a sort of a community engagement project that we did down there. Some I read about. And others were recommended by friends of mine. So, and their stories, in the beginning, they were just, compelling stories. But I soon, after the interviews, just sort of learned to love, who they were and what they did with their kids. And as far as opening up, it was a funny story. There was one mom who I interviewed up in New York, and she was a friend of a friend. That's how I, met her. Yeah, and her husband was killed 9/11. He was a firefighter, one of the first responders to the World Trade Center, and they had just had a set of twins. And one of the book events that I've done since the book was launched was with her. My sort of talking with her in the library that was named after her husband.
Oh, wow.
And her friends and family came up to me afterwards and said they had never seen her open up so much. And it's just sort of, I guess, well, I was in journalism. I guess that's part of it, realizing, how, sort of interviewing people and not being, and I think this is important when we're dealing with anyone, and another single mom or someone who's going through something. It's being empathetic and non-judgmental about what you're hearing, and just really letting people tell their own stories in their own way.
Absolutely. So, how do you keep from beating yourself up if you do something that you consider wrong? If you're trying to get it all right, you're trying to do the right thing. how do you change what you're doing and move forward without totally destroying your own self-esteem?
Well, that's hard. Because, one of the reasons that it took me so long to really write this book, because Russ's book came out about 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the story, the questions about me and what I did were like almost instantaneous. And I really said, no, I can't do this. I don't want it to be a book, about a book without substance kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wanted to do, and the other reason is that I didn't want to be considered an expert in this. I was not an expert. I was an experimenter. I read a lot, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but some things I did with the kids worked, some things didn't. Those things that didn't work, I would try something else. And so realizing that you're not going to be perfect, I think helps
Mm-hmm.
in helping to parent in a way where you don't beat yourself up.
Exactly.
So yeah, I made a mistake, and it's not a fatal flaw. I can do something else, and then being honest with the kids. I would tell them, okay, this didn't quite work out the way that I thought it was going to work out. But let's do something else. Why don't you, and engaging them in the process, I think has helped a lot.
Absolutely. If you're just joining us, we're talking about effective parenting, particularly if you're a single mother, with Joy Thomas Moore, author of The Power of Presence. You're listening to Another View, and I'm Barbara Ham Lee. So tell the story of what happened when you insisted that Wes go to Valley Forge Military School.
Wow. Yes. Which is probably the hardest decision that I've ever had to make as a parent. Wes was in an exclusive school in New York, because I thought he and Shani were there. And I thought that, okay, this is it. It's out of the neighborhood. This would be the place where he needs to go. But it wasn't. It was actually because, he didn't have the sagging pants and
Mm-hmm.
that demeanor, they thought he was doing fine.
Mm.
And he thought that C's were just fine. He became the class clown, and, everyone loved him. And, the folks that he went to school lived on Park Avenue, and, so everyone wanted to be his friend. And I said, okay, that's not enough.
Right.
That is not enough. So I found this school in Pennsylvania, Valley Forge Military Academy, and I sent him there first for a summer camp,
Mm-hmm.
just to sort of, give him a little taste without saying why. And
So he had no idea he was going to have to go.
Oh, no. No, indeed. But when he came back, I noticed that there was a marked difference in, who he was and the way he acted and that kind of thing. And this was just camp.
Mm.
So, and then, as you read in the book, one of the admissions officers called and said he had taken a test and he had done very well, and would I consider sending him there in September, which is only a few weeks away. And I thought, okay, I can't do this because I can't afford it. And my mom and my dad basically, they did a second mortgage on their house so that he could go.
Wow.
And
back to the pride.
Back to the pride. That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And, we could have a whole nother discussion about why home ownership is important.
Mm-hmm.
But when he went there, he literally ran away. I mean, first it was like total, no, I'm not going to do that, and as if he had a choice at 12. So I said, okay, I've got to be his parent now and not succumb to the realization that I'm sending my 12-year-old son away to another state, to a school that I really don't know about, and to a military environment that I've never been exposed to. Mm-hmm. But I thought at the time that was going to be best for him. So he went there and he ran away 4 or 5 times. And finally, I think that the thing that got him was he called one night. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and after his another failed attempt to leave the school. And I said, well, look, you've got to think about all the things, the sacrifices that people have made to get you there. And all you have to do is to stay 1 year. And if you do well, you'll have a choice. You can either come back to, New York to your old school, or you can stay, there. And with my fingers crossed the whole time that he would say he wanted to stay. And he did. He did really well. And he just, the sense that he no longer had to be the class clown, that he could do this work, and there was nothing that anyone could say, or he was not, how do I put this, that he belonged in the room.
Yeah.
Which he talks about now as a grown-up, that don't anyone ever tell you that you don't belong in the room. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that sort of sense of confidence and leadership that he gained in the school was basically, that became, that helped him become who he is now.
But one of the things that you talked about also was the whole idea of not being your child's friend, but being the parent. And as a single parent, a lot of times you just want things to go smoothly, so you just want to give in. Mm-hmm. But you really stuck to your guns.
Yeah, well, a lot of times what happens is that, okay, we will feel guilty that you are the only parent, and therefore you have to make up, for it by being, maybe over solicitous to your kids, or allowing them to do things that if you had sort of a partner there, they would say, okay, to sort of be your backup in some things. And, and I think that happens all too often, that we want to be our kids' friends. And, but, we have to be the parent. We have to sort of look ahead and start establishing those things that they can carry on, the sort of that voice in their ear thing. Mm-hmm. And so that down the road, we can be friends. The 3 of them my best friends now.
Yeah, because as they're adults.
Mm-hmm. They wouldn't have said that before.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Give us a call. Tell us about your struggles or your successes at being a single parent. We'd love to hear from you. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So one of the pillars that you talk about is resources, meaning finances, as well as other resources that are necessary to keep a family going. Talk a little bit about the balance of how you explain to your children the realities of whatever the financial situation may be, because they may want something and you may not be able to get it for them, or and so forth.
Exactly, and I think that can become one of those teachable moments. Mm-hmm. When you are teaching sort of the beauty of delayed gratification, so that they know that every time that they may want something, they may not be able to get it at that moment. They may have to work for it. They may have to wait for it, and eventually either they'll find out, I really didn't want that in the first place, or it was really worth my time and my effort to get that particular thing. Mm-hmm. That's part of, I think, building the value system. Mm-hmm. And also the whole thing about resources is we can't really burden our kids with how little we have. Yeah. And we have to do it in a way that says, okay, we can't do it right now, but eventually we can get it. But if we start saying we don't have this, we don't have that, and I think that often, especially in low-income communities, families, what happens is that the kid will take on the responsibility. Okay, I got to get the money.
Yeah.
I have to become the man of the man of the house, and bring, especially for our young men. And I think that happened Wes's book, the other Wes took on that kind of responsibility, and that happens more often than not. And so we as moms have to make sure that we don't put that burden on their kids.
Yeah, because it's not their responsibility. It is our responsibility. Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. And there's too many folks out here that will help that kid think that it becomes, it's a good thing and you can really help your family. And so the intentions are good, but the outcomes are always bad.
Let's talk about heart. Situation. Let's talk about heart. What does that mean as one of the pillars?
Heart is that your child really knows that they're number one in your life. That is sort of that unconditional love that you give. And I don't mean unconditional like you let them do anything they want. It's that unconditional expectation that this is my child and this is what I want for you for your life, and I am going to always be there to help you get that. So it's the sweet spot. It's when you look at the baby in the very beginning, the first moments of their birth, and you have all these things and goals that you want for your child, but it's also knowing that child will have their own goals and their own expectations, and that unconditional love means that you will allow that part of them to grow, and you will understand and help them along the way.
Yes, good. When we talk about faith, and you talk about people determining what faith means to them, you grew up in a Christian faith, and you actually struggled when Wes died.
Yes.
But yet you still made sure your children were grounded. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I was lucky, yes. My dad was a minister, and my mom, first one, lady of the church, and we were in church all the time. And so I did have that background, that foundation. But when Wes died, I had made when I was on my way to the hospital, I sort of made this deal with God that if you let my husband live, then I'm going to quit smoking. That's the only thing I could give up that I knew that mattered. And when that didn't happen, I kept smoking, and I also lost my faith. I lost my way. And but I knew that it was a foundation that was absolutely necessary for my kids. So they spent summers with my mom and dad, and they went to vacation Bible school and, that kind of thing, and church when they were there on the weekends. And I knew that even though my faith was faltering at that point, that they needed to have something. And then they could make a decision on their own when they get older. But at least they had to have that foundation. And then moving back to New York in my parents' home, I was able to regain my praying voice and my own faith.
I'm curious. Did the kids ask you about it when you were going through that period where you were, where, as you said, your faith faltered? Did they pick up on that, or did they ask you about it?
No, but they were still, so young.
They were still young, yeah.
At that point, Nikki was only about 10, and Wes was 4, almost 4 at that point, and Shawnee was 20 months.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So they were a little young at that point to sort of pick up on where I was coming from.
Gotcha.
But they still did. I did their prayers with them. So, they all knew their prayers, and it's funny because Una, the mother in New York with the 9/11 dad, she did this exact same thing. Whereas she lost her faith. She was very Catholic. They were Irish, and it was her in-laws who said to her, "Well, it's okay." Again, being non-judgmental really, really helped her. And they said, it's okay because the kids know their prayers, so that's her part of it.
Yes.
But we'll take them to church.
Yes. Wow. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Heather joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Heather. You're on the air.
Hi, I just want to support this beautiful woman and this beautiful book on lions and lionesses, especially. My dad will be 94. His mom was 17. She was a single mom. She had another son and daughter, and it was during the Depression. She worked, they know every penny, and I still live very frugally, how to spend money. But my dad's going to be 94 because his mom was a lioness who had other lionesses in her life. Her two sisters helped, and one of them had foster children. So my dad was raised with all these cousins as foster children, and her Irish, you just mentioned the Irish Catholic, his dad came from an Irish family, and Grandma Casey made him tea and taught him his prayers. So This is just ringing many beautiful memories for him and for this woman.
Thank you, Heather, for that call. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Joy, you want to respond to her?
Oh, that's just so beautiful, Heather. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I do hope that this book will help create dialogues in communities where stories like that can be told, where people can really acknowledge those people in their past who have, really helped them along the way and have helped strengthen their but not only their families, but their communities and hopefully this country as we go along.
So believe it or not, we only have 6 minutes left, and I want to talk about courage because I think I can remember as a single parent many times being very afraid about whatever a situation happened to be. Where do you dig? Where do you go to get the courage you need?
Yeah. Well, I've been asked, what is the common thread, throughout the book? And, and I always say that it's really fear, that you're not enough and that you can't do enough and that you will fail, at the end of the day. And then the other thread is courage, the courage that you can do it, the faith in yourself that I am going to help this child, this family, come out whole and successful and productive. Not everyone is going to do the same thing. And if we can raise, healthy, productive kids at the end of the day, and that takes courage. It takes the belief in yourself that you can do it. It also takes knowing what resources are around you to help you do that. I don't think you can sort of have, you have to have the courage to believe.
Yeah, and to reach out too,
That's right.
and to be able to ask for help. I wonder, and I don't know if you can answer this because you have 3 children, but do you think that if you're a single parent with multiple children, the kids kind of bond and connect too, which may make it a little bit easier than if you were a single parent of just one child? Or do you think there's a difference?
I think probably, and it is because, when Nikki, for example, was the only child, I think what was helpful was having, girlfriends and who had other kids.
Yeah.
So I think it bonded. I think it's always healthy to bond with someone, even if it's not a sibling, because it helps them when they're going through things. It helps them to know that they're not the only ones going through it. And I think that's helpful for moms to know that. It's helpful for dads to know that, and grandparents who are increasingly, taking care of kids.
Oh, speaking of grandparents, the grandmother who she had 13 kids of her own, and then she took in all the children of one of her kids. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And she's approaching 90 now.
Wow.
And still chewing her tobacco. And and she still goes out, she has a little plot of land outside of her rented home in Chicago and does, because she was a sharecropper. So she knows what she can, what she knows. And that's how she helped feed her family. But to take in 7 kids 2 of whom were in diapers at the time.
And she was in her 60s when she did that.
68. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that's family love.
Tiny little thing. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. She said they were not going to go. And she said that she had told people, people would tell her, why are you doing this? Let them, spread them out, bring them here, She said, nah, as long as I have a breath to take, these kids will stay together with me.
I tell you, it takes very special people. In the last 2 minutes that we have with you, Miss Joy Thomas Moore, give us some words of advice, some encouragement to single moms. What would you tell them?
Well, I think that I'd like to maybe, close with the single moms of, creating a space within their families that is a space of harmony, a space of love, a space of knowing that your child, knowing that you are there for them unconditionally. You are teaching them, and and you become their teachers. Parents are the first teachers of their kids, and there is a saying from William Arthur Ward that says that a mediocre teacher tells. So we as parents, some parents just tell their kids what to do. And a good teacher explains. We have to take the time to explain why things happen. A superior teacher demonstrates. By our actions, we then can show our kids what we can do. But a great teacher inspires. And that is our job, to inspire all of our kids. Whether you are a single mom, riding a unicycle, or you are family, riding a bike.
That is fantastic. And we must inspire, because our kids watch every single thing that we do.
That's right.
And we have to keep that in mind. How are you making out on the smoking?
I finally stopped. Only because, again, the kids. Johnny took my cigarettes and put them, wet them up, crushed them up, and put them in there. And I said, I was so mad for a moment. I said, why am I mad? And I stopped.
And Shani said something to you too, didn't she? She said she didn't want to be an orphan. See?
She didn't want to be an orphan. Yeah.
The book is called The Power of Presence, Be a Voice in Your Child's Ear, Even When You're Not With Them, by Joy Thomas Moore. Joy, thank you. It has been such a delight talking with you, and we really appreciate it.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, and we'll be right back.
You're so beautiful. Give the world a show. Go up, down, up, down, up, down. Go up, down, up, down, up, down. Shake it fast. It's yours.
What's up, y'all? I'm Jussie Smollett, and I'm chilling always and forever, and you're listening to Another View.
I don't care who knows. Go up, down, up, down, up, down. Go up, down, up, down, up, down. Shake it fast. 'Cause it sure look good to me.
And welcome back. Today, Yasmin Charles is working at her dream job, teaching culinary arts to high school students. But it wasn't all that long ago that this Navy veteran found herself homeless. It was her personal experience that has Yasmin committed to sharing not only her story, but the stories of other veterans who have found themselves on the streets. Yasmin recently sat down with our Lisa Godley to talk about her experience and her YouTube video channel, Homeless Veterans Tell All.
You are watching Homeless Veterans Tell All.
On her YouTube channel, Yasmin Charles delivers her message with grace and poise.
Homeless veterans. 2 words that don't belong together, yet it is one of our greatest social, economic issues.
To look at her, you'd never guess that a little over 2 years ago, Yasmin herself was homeless.
I had a really difficult time in college. I was not prepared for life in college, and I struggled through a lot of my classes. With the GI Bill that you're given, the military gives you about 36 months to finish. And so I ran out of my GI Bill, and I eventually exhausted all of my savings, including my retirement account. And I kind of saw homelessness coming. I eventually find myself a room to rent, and I was 20% out of my apartment. And when I moved in, the landlord told me, well, Miss Charles, we want 3 months rent in advance. And so at that point on, I just kind of gave in, and I moved everything out of there. And I put my stuff in storage, and I slept in my car for 3 months.
Yasmin was able to turn her situation around after someone told her about Vets House, a place in Virginia Beach that provides housing for homeless veterans. With a clean, safe place to regroup, Yasmin was able to finish college, get a job, and move into her own apartment.
I remember telling God that I will never question your love for me, and I know you're never going to question my love for him. So that experience really built up my character, and honestly, if I had a chance to go back, as difficult as homelessness was, I wouldn't change a thing, because it's changed my life. It's changed the way I see the world, the way I look at people.
Yasmin's new outlook prompted her to create a YouTube channel where homeless veterans could be heard, where people could view individual stories and gain a better understanding of the challenges these former servicemen and women face.
Oftentimes people look at veterans with this stigma that those of us out there we're either lazy, we're bums, we're alcoholics, but we all have a story. So when I came on the other side of it, I wanted to make sure that I could create a platform for them so people would know what it's like to be a veteran, what it's like to be homeless, and really just allowing folks to understand that we all have a story.
Yasmin says it doesn't take long to find a homeless veteran with a story to tell.
When I'm driving, I really pay attention. Like if I see someone who's panhandling and he has that little sign, he's holding it up, and especially if it's a veteran, I do approach him. I have come out of my car just to have a little conversation. I do ask them if they want to share their story. Some have, and some just don't want to be on camera.
Her goal with Homeless Vets Tell All is to film an episode every other week.
What would you want the public to know about us?
Veterans have pride.
We have pride.
They don't know where to go, what to do, so they bum money.
Right.
They go in the garbage, they go in the trash bins. I've seen it.
That's true.
You know, and they go to these spots hoping to get a bed space for the night. And if they're there first, they get a bed space. If not, they're back out in the bushes somewhere sleeping. And that's all they know. They lost it all because nobody cared to help them.
Being homeless transformed Yasmin's life so profoundly that she couldn't imagine not sharing her story or helping other veterans tell their stories of homelessness.
Most of all, it's changed who I am. It's given me a sense of focus and purpose and urgency. And it has also allowed me to redefine the term success, because being successful has nothing to do with having money or fame or marital status or social status. My definition now of success intertwines with having and showing compassion. And every day I wake up and I'm excited about that because I know I'm making a difference in the lives of others.
For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And thank you, Yasmin, for the work that you're doing with homeless veterans. And we thank you so much for joining us today for Another View. We invite you to visit our website, anotherviewradio.org, and check out past shows you may have missed. While you're there, please sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. We're on Facebook, so like us, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. Next week on Another View, overcoming a problem that affects children and adults alike. Bullying. You'd be surprised at how many adults have been bullied. So tune in to find out how we can stop this epidemic. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Janae Jackson answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Hey, it's Norfolk State University's homecoming weekend. Go Spartans! Thank you so very much for listening to Another View.